Hey, this is Brooke, functional medicine dietitian specializing in fertility, and this is the Fertility Dietitian podcast, where I help you uncover the barriers that are preventing you from optimizing your fertility and teach you how to work with your body to finally take home a healthy baby. Each week, I will be diving into different topics on fertility and sharing my perspective on physiology, metabolic health, nutrition, and lifestyle approaches that have helped hundreds of couples get pregnant even after years of heartache. My goal is to empower you with the knowledge you need to take back control of your fertility. Happy listening. I am so excited to share this conversation with you. I'm chatting with one of my past clients, Caitlin, about her journey getting to her beautiful baby girl. She was trying to conceive, her and her husband were trying to conceive for 3 years before reaching out to me. They ended up committing to the Master Your Fertility program, which is my private coaching program, and got their BFP within about 3 months. We started working together in January of 2023, and they were pregnant by April. But before that, before reaching out to me, they went through 7 stimulated cycles, 3 stimulated IUIs. They went through an egg retrieval, which did result in 18 eggs and 15 fertilized eggs, but none of those embryos made it past day 3. They were extremely frustrated by the time they had reached out to me. They'd already worked with, one of the top rated reproductive endocrinologists in the LA area. They had worked with a naturopath and just felt like they weren't being listened to, felt like they weren't getting answers, and did not like the answer of just continuing to do IVF. So I'm so glad that they trusted me to be part of their support team. Keep listening to hear all about Caitlin's experience. Hi, Caitlin. I'm super excited to chat with you today about your experience working together.
Yes, so am I. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, first, if you're comfortable with it, can you just give us a brief introduction of who Caitlin is?
Sure. My name is Caitlin Hardy, and I'm currently living in South Orange County, San Juan Capistrano, where I grew up. And when I started working with Brooke, I was in Los Angeles. Married my college sweetheart, Sean, and we have a daughter who's almost 1 now. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks for introducing yourself. What did your fertility journey look like before we met?
Oh gosh, I actually wrote down some notes before we had this conversation because it was quite the journey before we finally, decided to work with you, and obviously so happy that we did. It was a little over 3 years was our journey, and we decided we wanted to start trying a few years into our marriage. And I think it was like right when we had first started trying, I had a chemical pregnancy, so like a false positive pregnancy test, which was a huge bummer. But because we had just started trying, I kind of took it as a win in a sense that, hey, we got pregnant pretty quickly. And so I remained optimistic. But then for 3 years of trying, we didn't have another positive pregnancy test during those 3 years, and that was a huge challenge. I started, with more of a natural approach. I had always had longer cycles, so I wanted to, try to shorten my cycles. And I was working with an acupuncturist who specialized in fertility. And while that was really nice and relaxing, I did 4 months of that, but it didn't really have a huge impact on my cycle. I know it works for a lot of people, but for me, we weren't seeing much change. And then after that, we did see a naturopath doctor through a practice in El Segundo. My experience there wasn't great. I met with a doctor and paid a lot of money for a bunch of blood tests, and was sort of told, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing you can do. Just keep trying. I didn't feel very supported at that appointment with that doctor. It just was kind of like we couldn't find anything. So just keep trying. My, you know, the next thing that our acupuncturist had actually encouraged that we do was work with reproductive partners, which is an IVF and reproductive clinic in LA, pretty well known. And we worked with two different doctors there. We took the slower approach, which was start with medicated monitored cycles, and we did 8 medicated monitored cycles. We started with, I don't remember if it was Clomid or Letrozole, one or the other. And so we did 4 with that, with Clomid, 4 with Letrozole. Never got pregnant, with that. Prior to starting those medicated monitored cycles, I was given some blood tests before working together, with them, and they did identify that my thyroid was a little high. Typical for pregnancy, you want it under a 2.5, and I think it was about a 3.5. So they put me on levothyroxine to kind of get that down. And so I had to pause. We couldn't start the medicated monitored cycles until my thyroid came down a bit. So that was a little bit of a setback and disappointing, but, a few months, and then we started the medicated monitored cycles. After none of that worked, we moved on to IUIs. We did 4 IUIs, and then we still weren't pregnant, never got a positive pregnancy test, and kind of felt like, you're run of the mill, like here's just the next thing, the next thing. I almost feel like in hindsight, my mental state was like, since they draw the whole like year out for you, you almost think I'm going to have to do IVF. Then we moved to IVF. So that was, the results of our IVF were really discouraging. I know for anybody going through it, it's so taxing on your physical and emotional state. It was one of the hardest times that we had to go through. We had pretty good results numbers wise, getting 18 eggs, 15 of them fertilized. But then the shocking part, of IVF for us was that we got 0 embryos. So we were told that all of the embryos stopped growing on day 3. And at that point, we were just kind of had no more hope. It was a really hard time. And the most frustrating part, I think, for me at that point was asking our fertility doctor, with the practice, why is this happening? Why did this happen to me? Why did they all stop growing? And they couldn't tell me why. They did tell me that, it was very rare that this happens, and I've only seen it with one other person, but that I should take a 2-month break and do another egg retrieval in January. And that was just not enough for me. I was like, I'm not about to spend another $20,000 doing an egg retrieval and not know why this didn't work. I was not getting the answers I wanted to hear, or any answers at all. So I decided to take a breather, kind of took a step back. For the first time in my life, I went to therapy, and my therapist even encouraged me to just take a break. In hindsight, I think I was definitely under a lot of stress going through all of these processes to try to get pregnant, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And so taking that breather was really helpful for me. And then I had heard you on my best friend's sister's podcast, Be Well by Kelly, before, and also had another best friend who worked with you and did have a successful pregnancy. And she encouraged me to talk to you. She's like, she does a 45-minute consult. What do you have to lose? Tell her, what you've experienced. See what she has to say. And so I think I was just on Instagram one day and you came up with the wait list and I signed up and it was almost just like meant to be. I got that email for the consult and decided to, set up a conversation. And I told Sean, I said, you know what? Like, I think we need a pause from IVF. I really want to talk to this woman, Brooke. I think we should like check this out before we try IVF again, and give it at least 8 months working with her, because I really liked, some of the things you had to say after we talked. And he was all for it. He was so excited to not, go through IVF again and, kind of take this more natural approach to trying. And then we started working with you in January, and then at the beginning of March, we found out we were pregnant when we were in Hawaii with my family, and it was, the best day of my life. And I definitely have your program to thank for that. And now just going back and looking at everything and all the recommendations that you made and all the changes, we made, lifestyle and, diet, really, I do think is what led to our successful pregnancy. So that's a little bit about my story. Sorry, that was very long-winded.
No, that's all so helpful. But yeah, it's quite the journey. And I had the best time supporting you as well. I mean, I have all my clients are amazing, but I mean, you were so committed to the program and, following all my recommendations, and your husband was really supportive, which is always a really important piece to the success that you guys did end up having. Super frustrating to hear how many providers, even like quote unquote natural type providers, alternative providers that you went to before we started working together, and really weren't getting any answers or any good direction. That's so frustrating to hear. And I think so many that are listening to this or will be listening to this are going to relate to that. Feeling like they're trying all of the different things to support their fertility naturally, but really not getting answers from them. What do you think the difference was in us working together in the Master Your Fertility program versus, say, like working with your naturopath that you saw previously?
Yeah. It's interesting because my friend who had worked with you and then, encouraged me to work with you, she had asked me all about my experience with the naturopath, and I showed her, these are all the tests they did. These are the results. This is what they're telling me. And she said, they're not diving deep enough. Like, Brooke will dive deep and she will figure it out. And you did. I think, I can tell you care. That was a huge thing. I don't know if this woman really cared to like try to keep going and digging deeper. I just didn't feel either like I had the support with like hers was just, you go in, you do all the testing, you have a follow-up meeting, but that was it. And so if they just kind of wanted to shoo you off or not think that there could be something you could be doing differently, like that was just that. It felt like when working with you, you weren't giving up on me. We were going to you were going to make your assessment, do the testing, and then have our follow-up meeting. And then we had follow-up meetings, subsequent to that. Luckily, I got to use even some of my follow-ups with you postpartum because I got pregnant pretty quickly after working, with you. You took a lot of the stress out of it for me. I really trusted you and everything that you told me to do. So I think I just that lifted a huge weight. I was probably the most annoying client you've ever had. I blew you up on the messaging and asked you so many questions and just felt like you were always so patient with me. answered all my questions. You went above and beyond, like being so thorough, and I just really appreciated it. And I think it took a lot of stress out of the process.
That's good. I love to hear that. And you're definitely not annoying. I love when clients utilize our messaging center because that is a big part of the program. I give my private coaching clients unlimited access to me through a messaging center, which I think is so important because yes, we have our video follow-up meetings, but there can be so much that happens in between that, that if we can answer questions and give you support, maybe make tweaks to things that you're maybe not, maybe your body's not adjusting the same way that, or in a way that we hoped you would be, and we can make adjustments like anytime. So I definitely love it when clients use that messaging center as much as possible. It definitely leads to a quicker time of success. I see that over and over again. So as far as asking you about the differences between the naturopath and myself, there are many wonderful naturopathic doctors out there that are going to give you really great support, but they're not all created equal. I mean, just like all fertility dietitians are not going to be created equal. So I don't mean to throw shade on naturopathic doctors at all, but I think it's really important to bring to light that if your provider, no matter what they're calling themselves, a functional medicine doctor, naturopath, doctor, like reproductive endocrinologist, like no matter what, if you're not jiving with them, if you're not feeling supported and you're feeling like they're leaving stones uncovered, it's okay to fire them. You get to hire and choose your support team, and you should feel so supported and definitely see positive improvements in what's happening in your everyday life when you're working with them. So decreasing stress, maybe seeing cycle changes, energy, you name it. You should definitely feel like you're seeing those things to know that your fertility is being supported in the way that it should be in order to support that healthy pregnancy, which is typically the goal. So Caitlin mentioned that we started working together in January. This is January of 2023. And she was pregnant by March, like end of March or mid-March, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, April. Yeah, it was like seven. Yeah, it was end of March, I found out.
Okay. Yeah, which is quick, is definitely quick, but she was so, so committed. Like I remember her like in our follow-up saying, yep, I'm doing that. Yep, I'm doing that. Yep. I'm doing all of the things that we discussed in our initial consultation. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer to implement things, which is okay too. But I think that she definitely benefited from doing everything all at once because she had definitely been on quite the journey before that and was ready for that BFP, and she worked for it.
I'd have to say I was very committed by the time we started working together, and I wonder if I would have been so much if I had, worked with you before I even did acupuncture, because I had reached this level of frustration where I was just like, I will do anything Brooke tells me to do, and I'm just gonna follow her guidance all the way. But for anybody going or who is on their journey, I think that you reach your breaking point, and I would encourage people to like explore this as an option before you reach your breaking point. I wish I could go back 3 years, 4 years now, and have worked with you from the start. But everything happens for a reason, and here we are now. So I'm also grateful because I feel like, having worked with you, I'll be able to apply this program to future pregnancies. We have one child, we're hoping for more, and I just feel a lot more confident now trying after having success. So
that is so good to hear. What do you think the biggest changes were that you made in our time working together?
It's so funny because people ask me this all the time, and sadly, I think it was like eating breakfast within an hour of having coffee. I am a doer. I like love multitasking and go, go, go. And I think your program actually just slowed my life down because I had to, live with a little bit more intention, and I was um, eating a lot more. It's not like I wasn't eating, but with the program you had put me on, I was having, making time for 2 snacks a day, on top of the 3 meals and following the meal plan. But starting my morning with collagen in the coffee and doing breakfast when I just usually am not hungry right when I wake up, and so that was actually hard in the beginning to eat a substantial breakfast when I woke up. I think that helped though. Just also slowing down like the mineral soaks, the castor oil packs. I think all of that helped with my stress and anxiety that I have. So those things definitely helped. You put me on a whole supplement regimen. I think that I had, we were working on iron regulation. I had, too much iron in my system, and going on the prenatals that didn't have iron in them. And then I was surprised because before I started working with you and I knew I was high iron, I was trying to avoid foods that had iron in them. And then you had told me to do the reverse, and I, implemented that diet and actually brought my iron down. And even last week I had my blood tested and my iron is all regulated now, and I'm kind of eating the same food that you had me start eating January of last year. So it's crazy. Like all my levels are normal again.
Yay. That is a big win, and something for those of you listening, like all of my goal for all of my couples, of course, is to help them have healthy babies, get pregnant and have healthy babies, but it's also to have a very sustainable and realistic plan that they can continue following. So as Caitlin mentioned, she's still basically following the same recommendations that we used to support her getting pregnant initially. And hopefully that will help her have baby number 2 when they decide that they're ready to keep growing their family that way. So Caitlin also mentioned high iron. So iron dysregulation is actually a pretty common thing I see in my quote unquote unexplained infertility couples. So if iron is getting stuck in places, it can cause a lot of inflammation, and it can lead to metabolic changes that are not favorable for how we support egg quality and lining health. So likely a big piece of what was contributing to those embryos not being able to continue to develop. And iron regulation is way more than supplementation. We need a lot of other minerals like zinc and magnesium and vitamin A, which is a vitamin, but copper is another mineral that is really important. And I remember Caitlin's copper was very much on the low end, definitely playing a role in what was happening with her iron. But it's a really big area that is completely overlooked because the conventional medicine doctors just are not trained in that. They don't really understand how to test for it, let alone how to support your body in shifting that iron to go where it needs to go. But it can cause all sorts of issues. And since I mentioned like that iron dysregulation is likely one of the barriers contributing to those embryos not making it past day 3 when they were going through IVF, her husband's results were also a piece to that puzzle too. So we saw very low morphology for him, which is shape of the sperm. So too many sperm were having either 2 heads, 2 tails, bent mid pieces. So definitely contributing to more barriers in how that embryo is going to continue growing. So we always have to remember that sperm quality is so important, not only for fertilizing that egg, but for continued growth and development of that embryo, no matter how you're trying to conceive. So thankfully, Caitlin and Sean did not have to go back to IVF at all, because I think we cracked the puzzle, if you will, uncovered the barriers that were getting in the way of their conception journey initially. So, yes, yeah, super excited.
So happy about that.
Yes, me too. Yeah. We also dove into gut health for Caitlin too. And there were some barriers there just in how she was digesting and absorbing the foods that she was eating. So, my hunch is with the iron dysregulation and the gut imbalances that we found, even if she had started implementing like the breakfast piece on her own, it wouldn't have had the same effect if we hadn't of, gotten in there to rebalance that gut and known that she needed to change things up to support that iron regulation a little bit more. But breakfast is huge, huge, huge. So if you are listening to this and you do want a place to start, it doesn't hurt to start having a good balanced, high protein breakfast, roughly within an hour of waking. It can do a lot of good for many areas of fertility.
That's what I tell everyone now. And now I'm like trying to be better about it. Then of course, after having a baby, it's harder to have breakfast within that first hour of waking up, but got to make it a priority.
Yes, it definitely gets challenging.
I will say another thing that I remembered, you did differently than the naturopath that I worked with. And of course, no shade on naturopaths. It was just, her approach based on the assessment. We only did blood testing. She never did, hair mineral analysis test, which we did. And then the GI test, when I started with you, we did that along with blood tests.
Yes. So, blood testing can be helpful. It definitely depends like what markers you're looking at, but we can go so much deeper than that. And Caitlin mentioned the hair testing. So HTMA, or hair tissue mineral analysis testing, is a really deep dive in what's going on with mineral status. And minerals are so significant to how we are creating energy in our body. Fertility is such an energy intensive process. So if something's off with your minerals, something's going to be off with your fertility. If we're focusing on egg quality, we've got to have our minerals in place. And a big part to being able to balance minerals is making sure that there aren't other barriers that are taking those minerals away. So the barriers to mineral balance can be things like high toxic burden or stress, which Caitlin's mentioned, that she had to kind of slow her life down to work with this program a little bit more and achieve the success that she did end up achieving. But stress, whether it's internal stressors like blood sugar imbalance, maybe you're waiting way too long between meals or skipping meals altogether, and that internal stress can definitely deplete minerals, or external stress like relationship stress, job stress, fertility stress, all going to be depleting. And if we can do the type of testing like an HTMA and learn where your body's at, we can support it and where it needs to go in supporting, nervous system regulation, basically how your body's adapting to stress, which is a really big piece to the vast majority of clients that I work with. Fertility journeys, if you're struggling with fertility, are inherently stressful, and we know that stress is not going completely away, but we can support how your body is adapting to it in order to better support fertility.
Yeah, that was something I think over the course of our 3 years, people say, are you stressed? Like, try to not be stressed. And that is like the worst thing you can say to somebody going, through infertility. But it was, more than just like the stress you think of when you're like, I'm stressed out with work. The way you defined it to me was like you said, like the stress that your body is going through that you wouldn't even really know because, your energy is being depleted and nutrients are not metabolizing in the way they should. which then impacts cellular energy, and was, for me, the explanation of why the cells were not growing past, 7 cells on day 3 in IVF, which is just crazy. And it's like, I just finally feel like I got the answers, and it's so empowering, because of how many people I worked with that didn't give me any answers.
Yes. Oh, I love hearing that you feel empowered and that you feel like you got the answers because I mean, that's the goal, right? That is the goal for sure. And we really have to strip. I mean, there's all these fancy providers and doctors and things that we can do to support fertility. But if we strip all those things away and go way back to the foundations of fertility in our body and how our bodies are meant to support fertility, we have to start with energy creation. And like the HTMA is a pretty simple test, right? We're taking a small sample of hair, we're mailing it in, and then we get a bunch of results. It's not invasive. It might feel a little scary to cut some hair off, but
Or have your husband cut it off. That's the scary part.
Yes, that can feel scary, but it's also worth it. And you're not being poked or prodded. And the amount of information that you can get from a test like that is just, it's mind blowing to me. And I like run them and review them every day. Like it should be a part of regular routine physicals, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
if I could have just gone back and snipped the hair versus gotten all the needles into my stomach and all over the body, I would have definitely much preferred that. And I will say, like, having spoken about our negative experience with IVF, I do think that IVF is amazing, and a lot of people most certainly need it to build their families. But I just think that addressing egg quality through like the natural approach, even if you are going to do IVF and an egg retrieval, is so important, because it's like you're putting so much time, money, effort into the IVF process. You might as well address things like egg quality and sperm quality through diet and lifestyle as well.
absolutely.
I think a lot of women too, with even just companies paying for egg retrievals these days, are given a sense of false hope, because they don't even tell you when you go as a woman go in and do an egg retrieval that we don't know the quality of your eggs. They're not really addressing that. They're just telling you you're going to freeze your eggs, and that's like a nice safety blanket for when you want to use them. But you have no idea the quality of those eggs until you try to fertilize them. So
that's such a good point. Yes. And I completely agree. IVF is an amazing tool to use, but we can't go into that process unprepared. And unfortunately, there's not enough like education around like how to prepare for that. But if you are listening to this and, you are looking into going the IVF route for whatever reason, taking a step back and really thinking about how you've prepped your body for that can make a world of difference in the outcomes that you end up experiencing through the IVF process. And it's definitely not just a time suck or a financial suck. It's an emotional suck for sure. Like there's so much you're investing into this IVF process, and the hormones with stimulations, in order to get eggs retrieved can really throw your like natural hormones for a loop. And so how you're going to respond to that can make, how you've prepped for that can make a really big difference in how you're going to respond to that piece of the puzzle too, let alone like what quality of eggs you're going to be able to end up retrieving. So yes, lots of good points there too. And I work with a lot of couples that are going through IVF or know they are going to go through IVF and taking like a 3 to 4 month break before going into a retrieval. Even if you have done some retrievals in the past, taking that break to really focus in on supporting your body where it's at that point can make such a big difference. And I know I've already said that, but we see retrieval numbers in eggs double. And, it's not only about the number of eggs, as Caitlin has shared, they had a large number of eggs retrieved, but their eggs were not fertilized. Well, they were fertilizing, but they weren't continuing to develop past that day 3. So all the way from retrieving your egg to getting good quality embryos to implantation to having that healthy pregnancy. Like the ultimate goal is a healthy pregnancy. And so when you are looking at IVF, consider the healthy pregnancy stats of the clinic you're looking at too, because a lot of times they will just share pregnancy stats, which is quite different for that as well. So I'll stop rambling on that. I'm sure we'll do another podcast episode and a deeper dive to IVF as well. But how much time do you feel like you spent making changes that we were working on during our time together on a weekly basis, maybe?
Weekly basis. Well, I think in the beginning, it was more, and then it just became routine. In the beginning, I was warned by my friend who worked with you to say, like, you are going to be overwhelmed. This is a lot of information. You may not understand it all, which I didn't. You did a great job at explaining it to me, and it was a lot to like digest and understand. And then, I did further research, and I learned a lot. But in the beginning, it was a lot. It was more like, you gave me all these meal plans, a whole new supplement regimen. And then I think, there's just like, let's see, the castor oil packs, I was only doing around certain times of the month. I'd have to look back. But to answer your question, I think per week, it couldn't have actually been more than 2 hours total with the castor oil packs, taking a mineral soak, and then just maybe the extra time I'm spent breaking to eat. Because I was always just like, go, eat, run around. And one of the things I remember you encouraged me to do was like sit down and have your meals. Don't look at your phone, don't look at a screen, and eat slower, taste the food, chew it, swallow it, like just little things like that where I noticed, man, I really do just like run around like a headless chicken, and maybe I am stressing my body out. So, yeah, I definitely had to slow down.
Do you feel like you spent a lot more time like cooking or finding the groceries that you needed?
The first time I did grocery shopping with your meal plan, I probably should have done it differently. I took like every single ingredient for the entire week of all the meals and tried, like, I don't think I've ever bought that many groceries at the store before. And Sean's like, you're crazy. I would suggest splitting it up into different trips for people, but it felt overwhelming in that sense at the very beginning. But then, like, I got it down. Like, I knew to like order my collagen and, get certain vegetables when I go to the store. And variety was a big thing. Like, I was kind of eating all the same things all the time, and your recipes encouraged me to buy more of a variety when it came to vegetables and fruits and just like things I never really ate before, different types of protein, kind of training me on how to shop for meat and eggs and what to look for, free range. Now I'm going to say some of these wrong. But, so those little things that are now just so obvious to me, whereas before it was like, what did she say again? I had to go back and look. And so that was time consuming. But now they've kind of just turned into habits. And, you never pressured me to like, try to change everything overnight, but I put that pressure on myself and tried to. So I don't think, depending on your timeline, you don't have to change everything overnight. I remember I even sent you like a perfume bottle, and you read all the ingredients on it for me because I switched out one of my perfumes because I love perfume. And yeah, just like those little things. So I really did go all in though.
Yes. And it absolutely paid off for you. which is awesome. So not a
It's
ton of time.
definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Not that much time. It just like it was a lot in the beginning, but it's worth it because it becomes your lifestyle longer term and
Yeah,
it gets a lot easier.
definitely.
And I feel
Yes.
better now than I think I did over the past, 3 years of trying.
I love hearing that. What other changes, if any, do you feel like you saw during our time working together?
Hmm. Changes. I think uh, I was more relaxed. Loved the mineral soaks, the castor oil packs, like uh, the mineral mocktails were good. I feel like I still need to get better at making them, but those just like relieved my stress, um, made me slow down. I think I noticed that I was sleeping better at night, feeling less anxious, that sort of thing.
Awesome.
Also, just having that plan, like being able to follow something to a T, whereas nobody else was really giving me a plan like that, other than IVF and getting shots in my stomach every night. That plan was just stressful. Um, so yeah, I think just like having that and putting that trust in you relieved a lot of my stress.
That's great to hear. I mean, like you said, we hear all the time that we need to decrease our stress, but having the reliable information to be able to do that can be more challenging than it should be, unfortunately.
Mm.
What kind of advice, or do you have any advice for other women that were in a similar place to you before you started or we started working together?
Yeah. I think my biggest piece of advice is to go with your gut, take a step back, and really like think about. I was on such a hamster wheel. Like I'd never really took a step back. I was just like, what's the next thing? What do I do next? Like I was all about like fast tracking everything. And I feel like if I had just like by the time I got to like, okay, it's time to do IVF, I had felt like, okay, there's nothing else that I can really do. And even at that point before I did it, my friend who had worked with you said, you should try Brooke first. And I just had said no. I was like, I'm ready. I had thought of IVF as like, well, that's like the fastest way to a baby, and that's how I'm gonna get my results the fastest. And obviously, looking back, I would have done the opposite, but um, I think the experience, was valuable, and so I would say take a step back. I also kind of, I mean, I started changing my workouts, and I implemented meditation and prayer, and just like really trying to like turn it over to somebody else. And I think that helped as well. Because that, and like going to therapy. I think therapy is really helpful if like you're really in the thick of it, which I know a lot of people are. It can really help, especially when, I mean, Sean was like the most supportive person I could have ever asked for, but it is hard, and having somebody else to talk to about it other than your partner all the time was really nice. And just kind of like let it all out. And I think I needed to just like have that type of release and start meditating and slowing down to like make myself think clearer, and it led to our positive results. So many
Yes.
different things, but just not being afraid to take a step backward in a sense to like propel yourself forward. I think a lot of people are feeling like, I've already lost so much time. Like, I'm 35 and I'm not getting any younger, and I thought I'd have my first child, in my late 20s maybe, and we didn't even try until after that, but you get the point. So I think people just feel that pressure.
Definitely. Yeah. There's, there's a big misconception that fertility takes a big nosedive at 35. It's a small little decrease. And even then, like, even if you're 35, even if you're 40, like taking a step back and working on the foundations, working with somebody that can really help you uncover barriers that might be getting in the way of how your body's able to nourish fertility and support that good egg quality and good sperm quality on the male side makes a huge difference. I see it in practice, we see it in the research, but taking that step back actually decreases your time to holding that healthy baby. So even though it feels like you're taking a step back, when you look at the time to baby, you're actually going to decrease that time. So definitely don't hesitate to revamp your support team if you're in a place of feeling like you don't have appropriate support or don't have the answers that you think are out there for you to find. Well, thank you so much, Caitlin, for chatting with me about your experience. It was wonderful working with you, and I'm so excited that your little girl is going to be turning 1 soon, right?
Yeah, less than a month. It's so
crazy.
Wild. Yeah. No, we're so grateful to have found you, and I can't speak, high enough of my experience working with you, and have you to thank. We joke about how we should have named our first daughter Brooke.
Well, there's always another chance, right?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much. I know your experience is going to be helpful for many others to hear. But I hope you have a very happy holidays and so much fun celebrating your little girl's first birthday.
Thank you. We will. Thanks so much, Brooke.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fertility Dietitian podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review to let me know what topics you want more of or less of. If you want to keep learning, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out my website for more info on my private coaching program, Master Your Fertility, or my membership community, Fertility Blueprint. And don't forget my digital store. Come say hi on YouTube and Instagram. See you in the next episode.